980 WCAP. Everybody gets it.
Good morning, listeners, and welcome back to the Internet Marketing and Business Solutions Radio Show with Ron Couming of both RCS Technology Solutions and RCS Online Solutions, where we help business owners and entrepreneurs achieve even greater success by attracting, converting, and retaining their ideal customers and clients using various Internet marketing techniques and methods. The purpose of this show is to bring on a couple of subject matter experts in the first two episodes. In the third episode, I will give you some actionable tips that will help you achieve even greater success. The subject matter experts have already been there and done that and can help you achieve even greater success by skipping over some of the pitfalls that entrepreneurs, business owners, and those looking to become often go through. So listen up and reach out to these experts after the episodes. Today's first episode, we are blessed to have with us Mary Sheyne, which is pronounced Sheen, who is going to show us how to get out of our own way and connect with our audience. Despite starting out as a shy computer programmer who hid behind her computer because she was self-conscious, Mary went on to become the 2009 World Champion of Public Speaking, second-place winner out of 25,000 contestants from 14 different countries. She is currently the president of her own training and communication company and has trained over 15,000 people in 25 cities around the world. She has taught public speaking and communication-related classes at Northeastern University for 7 years and is the author of an Amazon best-selling book, Present Yourself in Public Speaking, Tell Your Inner Critic to Shut Up, and The Real You to Speak Up. So get ready to transform the way you think about public speaking. Please help me have a warm welcome for Mary Sheen. Mary, how are you?
Hi, Ron. I'm wonderful. How are you?
Excellent. And I love the accent. For those who don't know, you will soon know that, Mary, you're from originally Australia.
Yes, I am. I grew up in Australia, absolutely. My heritage is actually Chinese, but I grew up in Australia, which is why I sound like this. When people first meet me, they always feel confused. They're like, oh, you look Chinese, but you sound like an Australian. So that's my background.
That's excellent, and I've known you for several years, so I've gotten used to that. But it's that's like you China, Australia, and now the U.S. But you've also been to many other countries as well, correct?
Yeah, well, actually, I was born in Hong Kong, and the first 7 years of my life lived in Hong Kong, and then my family immigrated to Australia when I was 7 years old, and I lived there, grew up there basically my whole life, and moved to the United States, to New York, when I was an adult, and lived there for several years before moving to Boston, which is now where I reside. I've lived in Boston for about 10 years now. I can't believe it's been that long, but still got the accent.
Yeah, that's excellent. You in 2009, and that was right after. The first time I remember meeting you was in Connecticut in 2009. You were giving a presentation down there.
That's right, yes. So I'll give you a little bit of background about myself and tell you why I'm doing what I do to help small business owners to be able to speak on stage confidently. So where I began was what I like to refer to as a past life. Used to be a computer programmer, and that meant that I was behind the cubicle pretty much all day long, didn't really have to speak to a lot of people, and certainly not in front of groups. So what I found was when I had to speak in front of a group of people, whether it was at a work meeting or whether it was a presentation that I had to do once in a while, I would feel very, very self-conscious. And for your listeners who are listening, I'm sure that some of them can relate to this. If you're not used to speaking in front of a group of people, when you speak, you feel self-conscious, right? So what I found myself doing was trying to avoid situations where I had to speak in public. And when I had to, it was very, very uncomfortable. So what that meant was I didn't realize at the time, but what it meant was I was listening to that voice within my head telling me, oh, people are going to think this is stupid. What are people going to think of you? Are you prepared enough? Oh, you don't feel prepared enough. So there was that constant voice that was happening inside my head as I was speaking out loud, in addition to the voice that was coming out of my mouth. And so through that process, I got to a point where I said to myself, I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want to have to avoid situations where I had to be called upon. And more importantly, I had important things to contribute, so information or opinions that that could contribute positively to the conversation. But because I was so self-conscious, I was reluctant to speak up. And so I got to that point where I understood for myself that not only could I not advance in my career if I continued down this path of avoiding speaking in front of others, but frankly, I just didn't want to feel bad about myself anymore. So I decided to do something about it. I read a lot of books and on public speaking. How do I become a more confident speaker? I joined an organization, a non-profit organization called Toastmasters International, which I believe, Ron, you're also familiar with. Yeah. And I started slowly but surely to gain a little bit of confidence, a little bit at a time. And what I loved about the opportunities of speaking in front of a group of people who are also have the mutual goal of helping and supporting each other in bettering their public speaking skills in Toastmasters was even when I felt that I did a really poor job, and as soon as I was done with the presentation, I would sit down and think to myself, oh, I missed this point, I missed that point, I can't believe I said this instead of that, and the way I said it, the self-judgment that would go on as soon as I sat back down in my seat, regardless of how badly I felt I did, I would always hear applause, I would always hear positive comments from people, and so little bit by little bit, I started getting more confident. And eventually, I chose to switch careers. So I had to now speak in front of others by being a software trainer because I knew software, and now I forced myself to be in a situation where I had to speak in front of people and be able to articulate what I was teaching in such a way that others could understand. And so through that process of forcing myself to be a trainer, what I started to discover was slowly but surely, I started to speak without thinking about myself. So what I mean by that is instead of the presentation being all about me and how I looked and how great I was or how badly I spoke, instead I started focusing on the audience. I started focusing on the people sitting in front of me. Are they understanding what I'm saying? Is what I'm explaining to them making sense? And so that became the focal point of my presentations and trainings. And as a result, I didn't know at the time, but as a result, that was what got me over the hump of being self-conscious because I was no longer focused on myself. And through that process, years and years later, I started training more and more people, and eventually I became a public speaking coach and a public speaking trainer. And years later, I've now trained over 15,000 people from 25 cities around the world, and I've coached hundreds of individuals on exactly what I struggled with, which is how to become a better speaker. And here is what I discovered. Through the many years of not only speaking and training, but also teaching the subject of public speaking and training, I started to discover that there was a huge gap in the way public speaking was taught out there in the world. And what I mean by that is many of the public speaking trainings that I attended, and there were many, focused mostly, I would say 99%, on the mechanics of speaking. And what I mean by the mechanics of speaking is how to articulate your voice. How do I structure a speech? How do I create a message so that it's clear to the audience? How do I stand? How do I have vocal variety in the delivery? Do I move my hands? What are the gestures I use? All of those things I just mentioned are examples of what I would call under the umbrella of the mechanics of speaking. And that is very important because that's the fundamentals of speaking. But what I started to notice was, especially with the people that I trained who were very nervous or very self-conscious to begin with, the mechanics and teaching them about mechanics did not help them all that much. There was something else going on underneath that was preventing them from owning their confidence, preventing them from owning their expertise, because they were all very good at what they did. For some reason, they just had a challenge when they're on stage of translating that brilliance so that other people could see how brilliant they were. And through that process, I reversed engineered what I went through and discovered that there was something very fundamental to all of us as human beings that was not being addressed in the public speaking training world, and that is our own inner critic. So what I mean by our own inner critic, I think that it's probably self-explanatory to a lot of people, is when you're on the stage, there are always two voices happening, and I alluded to this earlier in my earlier experience, which is the voice that's coming out of your mouth and that voice that's going on inside your head. And that if you're not conscious about the little voice that's speaking to you all the time inside your head, it can easily derail you when you're on the stage, and therefore not being in the way and being almost like an invisible wall between you and the audience, because if you're listening to that voice, there's no way you can be focused on what the audience needs or what is the audience understanding it. And am I saying, what I'm saying, is it coming across clearly to the audience? Because you're so focused on yourself, right? Are they judging me? Am I doing this right? Am I saying this? Is it right what I'm saying? Is it stupid? Is it good? Are they understanding? Am I coming across as smart? So instead, you're focusing on that voice. So it's a long-winded answer to your question. What I ended up doing, and I've been teaching this for years, the processes of how to conquer your inner critic, tools to use, implementing it in your everyday life so that you can overcome your inner critic, no matter what it's saying to you, not to believe it, and to proceed and not allow it to stop you, was I bottled up my processes that I teach in my trainings into a book. As you mentioned in the introduction, it's called Present Yourself in Public Speaking. Tell your inner critic to shut up and the real you to speak up. And published the book back in December 2016, and within 2 weeks, it became Amazon bestseller. So I know it's resonating with a lot of people. Someone wrote this in one of my book reviews, and they said, at last, someone is talking about the pink elephant in the room when it comes to public speaking, the inner critic. So the book,
I think that's big, because so many people will allow themselves to talk themselves out of doing so much and not taking the action. One thing I wanted to talk to you about was I took some notes as you were talking, and I know, like you said, you mentioned Toastmasters, and one of the things that I learned when I was giving presentations was that once I stopped thinking about me and what I wanted to say, and I focused on what I wanted the audience to take away from whatever it was I was presenting, like 90% of my nervousness went away, because then it was more about focusing on the audience instead of myself and making sure that whatever it was that I wanted to convey got conveyed. And I like the way how you mentioned that.
Yeah, and that's a really good way of putting it. And I want to, and by the way, that's wonderful, that the way that you were able to do that is similar to the process that I went through. However, for your listeners, I would really like to emphasize the point that it's not an overnight thing. It's not something that, you feel self-conscious, you go up there, you speak, and wow, suddenly it's my self-consciousness is gone. It doesn't work like that. It happens over a long period of time. And what I tell a lot of my trainees and coaching clients is that it's a process. It's not something that confidence itself is not something that happens instantly. It's something that you earn over time. So the more you speak and the more direction you have from somebody ahead of you who's been through it to guide you and support you through the process, so whether it's a mentor or whether it's someone who's supportive of you, who you admire, who speaks in a way that you wish you could speak, and have pointers from them to be able to continue down the path without it stopping you, then over time you will earn that confidence, And I did want to mention that and emphasize that because I didn't want to mislead people to think that it's something that you can, that you can attain overnight. And more importantly, don't feel like there's something wrong with you if you do have that inner critic inside of you saying, oh, you did a bad job, or oh, this is not, other people have confidence, but how come I don't have confidence? All those erroneous assumptions that we have about ourselves, that it's something wrong with us.
Yep, and I also, when we talk about speaking from the stage, or giving presentations, the skill sets that you're teaching people could be used to speak from a stage in front of multiple people, or it could be used if you're in giving a PowerPoint presentation in the office to your boss, coworkers. If you're looking to start a business and you need to get in front of some venture capitalists or other people to contribute money or believe in you or maybe joint venture with you and promote you to help you achieve even greater success. So the skills that you're talking about and teach, Mary, everybody uses, even if it's in their everyday relationship with their spouse or whoever they're dating or whoever they want to date. So these communication skills transcend just speaking from the stage. Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. So how I would like to reframe that is, you are the common denominator, right? So if you work on your communication skills and how your own presence, so to speak, that's why my book's called Present Yourself in Public Speaking, because it's not always just about the presentation itself. Present is in inverted commas as a play on words. If you are present in front of an audience, in other words, you in your mind, you're not in the past, you're not in the future, you're not wondering about how quickly I can finish this presentation, or when I did the presentation in the past, it didn't go well. So instead of being in that frame of mind, if you are present in the now, in the here, then that's when the inner critic goes way into the background and you're able to express yourself from this space of truth, authenticity. And when you work on yourself from that regard and train yourself like a muscle, and you get strong in that muscle of being present, and as I mentioned, you are the common denominator, and so the application of your presence is going to be benefiting you no matter what area you're speaking about, whether you're speaking on stage, whether you're speaking one-on-one, whether you're having a confrontation with somebody and you need to express yourself in an authentic, compassionate way. And so the applications are diverse, and you are the common denominator, and that's what I help people do. Specifically, I work with a lot of small business owners and people who are starting up their businesses because they find themselves in a situation where they have to now communicate and express themselves as to what their business is about. How do they go about helping people, and how do they go about offering these services to people so that they don't, so that their primary concern is not what most people usually feel with their new businesses is, oh, I don't want to sound salesy, that, their little voices, what I call the little voices, the inner critic is telling them, oh, I don't want to sound salesy, I don't want to come across like I'm being pushy, I want to sound confident, what if they ask me a question that I don't know, am I going to sound knowledgeable, all these concerns that people have. I work with them to dispel those myths that they have and to help them understand that, hey, what you're doing is not about you, because that's where we all get tripped up when we make it about ourselves. And so, for example, I'll give you an example. I had this one client, and there are many, many examples that are similar, but this is one example I can think of. She came to me, and she had this big presentation that she was going to be giving in front of 50 of her ideal clients, and it was at a really prestigious firm, and she was very nervous, and she wanted to be able to offer them her services and give them some content that was relevant to what they were doing, but her main concern was she didn't want to sound salesy. And I said to her, look, listen, if those people walk out of the room and they don't know what you offer, you are going to be shortchanging them. Have you helped clients in the past? And she said, of course. Have you helped them succeed with what you do? She was a social media expert. She said, absolutely. I said, okay, so if they walk out of the room and they didn't know that you had those services to offer, you're basically doing them a disservice by not telling them. So I said to her, when you make an offer, when you tell them what your services are, it's the same. The analogy that I like to use is, a hamburger, right? So if you have a nice, yummy, delicious, juicy hamburger, and you say, hey, everyone, I've got this juicy hamburger, some people in the audience are going to say, I'm hungry, I love hamburgers, give me some, right? Some people in the audience are going to say, oh, nice hamburger, I'm not quite hungry right now, maybe later. And some people in the audience are going to say, no, I'm vegetarian, no thanks. But a percentage of the people in the audience definitely want what you have and can use your help in helping them with whatever it is that you help them with. And so if you don't open your mouth and tell them about it, then you're doing them a disservice. So by reframing that mindset, you're redirecting the focus away from you and how you look and focusing on them and how they can be helped because of what you have for them. So that's an example of an application of, once you be present and you reframe your focus, how it can help you in your business.
That's excellent. Now, I want to let the listeners know two things. One, this episode, as all episodes, are archived both on the radio station, WCAP 980's website, as well as my personal website, rcstechnologysolutions.com. Just scroll over to the media tab and then radio station. So you've heard some real gems from Mary, and so if you want to go back, you might be driving, you might be at work, whatever the case may be, you're certainly able to go back and listen to the episodes. Mary, we're down to like 4 minutes. Could you please give the listeners your contact information and then maybe one good tip how they could get started? Obviously, a great way to get started would be to contact you and start working with you, or at least read your book. But, just a good tip and also your contact info.
Absolutely. So my website is magneticpodium.com, www.magneticpodium.com. That's all one word. You go to the website, I would recommend that, well, first of all, download the tip sheet that I have, the most common myths about public speaking, and you can click on the menu item live events to see where I'll be. I give workshops and boot camps about public speaking all the time. And if there's any way I can help you, you can certainly contact me and we can have a short conversation on the phone so I can find out a little bit more about you and how I can help you. And to do that, you can go to calendly.com, that's calendly.com/magnetic podium, or one word, and that's where you'll see my availability and go ahead and book a time with me. And so, this has been a very short conversation, and we've said a lot during the conversation. If I was able to leave your audience with one tip, I would say it's becoming a better public speaker and being able to articulate yourself authentically on stage is not so much in the knowledge. I mean, you've heard a lot of knowledge today from the points that we've talked about. It's in the implementation. It's in the applying of the knowledge. It's in the application of the knowledge in your life. And I would highly recommend having a mentor, someone who could guide you through it, whether you were through me, with me or somebody else, to guide you through it and to help you support you, emotional support and guidance as well as the knowledge along the process so that you don't allow your inner critic to convince you to exit the process, because it is a process.
I love it. And I just want to remind the listeners that Mary went from being an engineer or a programmer, sitting behind a desk, unable to communicate, to being second in the world out of, 35,000 contestants?
Contestants from 25 countries.
That's amazing. So she's definitely
14 countries.
14 countries. So this is definitely somebody that you can learn from. And if you're giving presentations at work, you want to do better at work, or you want to start your business, you're in business, you need to speak better to your customers or clients, even if it's one-on-one at a coffee shop. If you're in B&I or something and you're meeting with somebody, your communication skills will definitely reflect your bottom line. Your ability to connect with people and be authentic is absolutely related to your communication skills. Mary, I want to thank you. I highly recommend it. And I'll tell you something. I think I've mentioned this to you, and I want the listeners to hear it. That event that I saw you at in Connecticut, you have probably one of the most prepared speakers I've ever met. Now, I'm going to an event in Chicago in a week or so to listen to somebody who is a great speaker, and he makes, $150 million a year, and I go to events across the country probably 7-8 times a year to both connect with people and continue learning. But when I saw you in 2009, you not only got to that location early and you were practicing from the stage, you actually had X marks on the stage. So you knew exactly places where you were going to stand, and you checked out the lighting, and you checked out where you were going to stand. I mean, you're definitely somebody who puts the time and effort into achieving success, and that's what it's really all about. So I just wanted to publicly, even though that was in 2009, I still remember that. It was way down in Connecticut, District Area 54, I think it was.
Yes, definitely. It's all in the preparation and in the mindset. So if you're prepared and it maximizes your confidence because you know exactly what points you're going to make. And also, it is in the work. It is work. It is effort, to move along in your process to become a better speaker.
Excellent, and it will benefit you in every area of your life, certainly professionally, but also personally. I mean, if we have better relationships with our family members, husbands, wives, kids, whatever the case may be, I mean, it just makes your whole life so much better. So, again, I want to thank you so much. I highly recommend Mary to anyone who's listening now or on any of the archived episodes. Mary, thank you very much. And yep, everyone, you've been listening to the Internet Marketing and Business Solutions radio show with Ron Couming of both RCS Technology Solutions and RCS Online Solutions, where we help business owners and entrepreneurs achieve even greater success by attracting, converting, and retaining their ideal customers and clients.